Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Filipino journalist Jaime FlorCruz has been a witness to China's progress while working as a foreign correspondent in China for some 40 years, having a front-row view of historical events and developments in this country. FlorCruz arrived in China in 1971 as a student leader and ended up being admitted into Peking University's famous class of 77. It was the year of great change in China's contemporary history. Jaime's classmates, together with the peers of their generation, went on to become pioneers of the country. They embraced the tremendous opportunities with courage and can-do spirit when China just decided to reform and open up. FlorCruz himself became one of the top foreign correspondents in China later, working for Time magazine and CNN, spending 40 years reporting on the fast-changing country. He later retired, but now he's still telling his China stories. Now in a new book, The Class of 77, How My Classmates Changed China. Clearly, his stories are not just about his classmates, but rather about that whole generation of Chinese who have made a difference. Every one of those students of the class 77, and possibly 2 or 3 years since then, had their own exhilarating stories because they many have been go to the countryside. They went through different stages of China's modern history. There's also uncertainty about the country, about what to do next. So there are a lot of combination of things going on. It's really very exciting. Tell me more about that, your personal observation.
I learned a lot in class, but I learned a lot more outside the classroom, joining these discussions and debates among my fellow students. Many of them had already very rich experience, social experience, working on the farms, in factories, serving in the army. And so they had both social, practical experience, as well as the academic credentials. So it was a perfect group of people. And I learned a lot about China, about China's history, and about where China was going through the eyes of my Chinese classmates.
What do you think the qualities of these people, and particularly after you graduated and also went into the society, how the earlier experiences have in a way cultivated them for their future roles?
For this elite, this new intellectual elite, is that they were not just bookish. They were not in the ivory tower just talking about theories, but they knew the problems that they had to deal with, and they tackled them using the education that they got from the institutions, but also guided by pragmatic, practical issues.
Can you give me 1 or 2 examples of 1 or 2 students that you got to know them quite well, and also how you maintain this kind of communications and also friendship with them throughout the decades?
So one of them, two, my former roommates, one of them, Li Xiaocong, eventually became a professor, a tenured professor at Peking University, specializing in geology and history. He became kind of the protege of China's most famous historian, Hou Renzhi, and he became an expert on ancient maps. Another roommate, Jiang Wenran, or Wenran Jiang, he became a professor in Canada, a very eloquent and a very seasoned commentator on international relations and politics.
Very interesting. Both of these gentlemen I got to know over the years, interestingly. So yes. I really wonder, what was the chemistry like in the dorm when you were, dorm mates together?
Well, in the beginning, of course, there were awkward moments, but we hit it off because they were able to help me with my classwork, with Mandarin and classical Chinese. But I also helped them improve their English. There were times when we would converse in Chinese and at times converse in English. So I also helped them learn about culture in other countries, including Beatles songs, and we talked about a lot of things, including love and courtship.
Well, then many of the details we'll discuss off the record about your roommates.
That's
But,
right.
putting jokes aside, one serious issue, Jamie, you know this so well, both as an observer, a witness, and a participant of China's development over the past decades from 1977 on. All these important choices at critical times, sometimes voluntary, making changes, sometimes under circumstances, changes were made in order to move forward. So how do you see these critical choices and the roles of these young people you got to know back in the year 1977?
What I want my readers to look back and appreciate is how difficult the process had been. Yes, they had to make very difficult choices of opening up, but how to open up China and still maintain stability, social stability. And that was a very difficult balancing act. And I think it remains China's challenge, how to adapt to changes and how to move forward while keeping social stability, which of course will give predictability to China's future.
As a witness of China, and also as friends of your classmates and many Chinese that you have met, and also your capability of reconcile these roles all at the same time and play different roles at different time. Tell me, how did you manage to do that? What has the education, Peking University, 1977, and the decades living in China taught you about how to function under different circumstances, but still true to your heart?
My education, I think, helped me learn a bit more about China's history and tradition, and appreciate how strong a pull history and tradition conditions China's, policies, actions, and reactions. And so I think learning about China's history will help us understand China better. It's a matter of capturing the nuances for me. So I looked at China not as a black and white, nor just a half empty glass. I've said that I've always tried to look at China as a glass half full, not half empty, because I saw China 40 years ago, 50 years ago as a virtually empty glass. And I think that's important. I also try not to caricature the Chinese people. And I really am distressed when I see the anti-Asian and anti-Chinese behavior or reaction overseas, because I think that it's really wrong to equate certain behavior or certain policies or actions of a government or certain people, and then summarily look or blame that on a people.
Blanketly.
So I hope that, and through my stories of the past, my reporting, I've tried to capture the nuances and to give a balanced view of China. I give China when credit is due, and then I criticized when it's merited. And I think by doing so, I think I did well in that sense.
I remember the one little details, Jamie, you depicted in your book. with an old staff of Peking University when you just enter the university campus and try to find your dorm and your classmates. And there was a very vivid details of almost every minute of that interaction that you wrote in your book. I think it's very interesting how we remember our own personal history, and just every second of one moment could make a difference.
Yes, and that is because of the intense kind of changes that we went through all these years, how Spartan life was, and yet how simple but romantic in a way life had been. So when I look back to that past, I have this sense of accomplishment and happiness that, you know, in a way, all those things were blessings in disguise.
This is in page 2. Cai Huosheng, a stocky 50-something staff officer of the Foreign Students Office, greeted me at the door. "You're the only student we are enrolling from the Philippines this year," he said, as I handed him the required documents. "Welcome, welcome." He volunteered to show me around for orientation. We walked past the library and a classroom building where scores of students were on a break. Most wore blue and green Mao jackets and baggy pants. They were lined up on the sidewalk doing calisthenics in sync with the staccato music blaring from the university's PA system.